Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Back. You know, we've been talking about the Fufeng project quite a bit in the Grand Forks area. Many people are against it. And then just doing a little more research, you know, they kind of talked to the military now more recently. And it's my understanding that they weren't notified in the proper order as to, hey, there's a Chinese company that is going to purchase land and build a factory right next to your Air Force base. And so there's people battling it out on Facebook, and which isn't where we get our sources of information, but sometimes we find people who will be guests that know firsthand knowledge.
Yes.
So don't blow off all that information. There's a
That's
lot
right.
of people that have good information. But you know, even when Kramer was here, when Ennis Freedom was in town, Senator Kramer was on stage and he said he's 100% certain that the Chinese will be spying, and yet red flags are still not being raised as concerns.
Wow.
Right? So I tried to do some research this weekend regarding Chinese spying, and I came up with this article. Now keep in mind, this article is from 2018, but it says China's 5 steps for recruiting spies. Now, these are cases of Americans allegedly recruited to spy on China's behalf follow a basic pattern. All right, so what they're doing is they come over here to try to find people that will spy on their behalf. And so there are 5 steps. So now here is the first one. Stage 1 is spotting. The first step in any espionage recruitment is simply knowing the right people to target. That job often falls to what intelligence professionals call a spotter, a person who identifies potential targets, then hands them off to another intelligence officer for further assessment. These spotters, sometimes friendly officials at think tanks, universities, or corporations, are often separate from the intelligence officers who ultimately approach potential spies, allowing a level of 2 or 3 of remove. They sometimes have such deep cover that they are considered too valuable to make a recruitment approach directly, leaving that work to a cutout who could more easily disappear if the recruitment pitch is rejected. So I know that's a lot of information, but it's like it's a spotter. So it's like they pick somebody out, say in your business or your corporation that they want to gain information from. And so then that person's identified, but the person that spots them does not approach them. It's like 2 or 3 removed.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Just to go ahead to get to that person.
Right.
And I like, you know, how they explain to us, they don't just go to McDonald's, they're going to go to think tanks, universities. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
And those types of businesses that would have somebody where somebody knows somebody that knows somebody, and they start the process.
Yep. And you know, interestingly enough too, as we get into this further, some of the things they're doing, they will start to target and you know, spot Americans that are studying over in China. I mean, that goes clear back to the early 2000s, where they'll start monitoring those folks and figuring out which ones might be a soft target. But then also when they're spotting, it's not just people, it's businesses. And so when I think of Grand Forks and I think of, you know, they're looking at location, they're looking at water supply, they're looking at food supply, they're looking at a lot of things when they're spotting, you know, where's our next target that we ought to zero in on? And then it gets into people as well, but, you know, they're looking geographically too.
And when you both kind of touched on education, there was a scandal about 10, 12 years ago out at Dickinson State University that they were giving Chinese nationals fake diplomas right here in North Dakota. So when you start tying a lot of this stuff together, and now we are Chinese friendly, and our governor is it the 2nd or 4th friendliest governor to China?
Right.
It's like all of these things, you just start connecting the red dots.
And our legacy fund being invested in China more than Russia.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
We have some cleaning up and some splaining to do.
There we go.
Yeah.
So then the second step is assessing.
Okay, once intelligence officers identify potential recruits, then they examine how they might encourage those targets to spy. Professionals often summarize the motives for espionage with the acronym MICE: money, ideology, coercion, and ego. Spies want to be paid for their work or believe in the cause or can be blackmailed or want the ego boost that comes with leading a double life. Well, that kind of explains everything that's happened. That's a describing Hunter Biden right
I was
there,
just
is
thinking
it not?
that, you know?
Completely.
Can I call him a plural and call him a mice? I don't know, but yeah, but it's so true. I mean, when you look at weaknesses in people,
Yes.
you know, where's their need? And, you know, these guys are sophisticated enough and trained enough that they know how to look for those weak spots and they know how to press that button. And, you know, if you do it subtly and enough times, pretty soon you're going to get nibbles and you're going to get bites, and then it's game on. And then I don't know if somebody, you know, it does say too, where Brennan even said, the former head of the CIA, that many times they don't know the road they're on until it's too late. You know, these people that are targeted to get into this spying network for the Chinese.
Well, and I've heard that in government too, just in our own local or state government. People get into it and it's all fine and rosy, and all of a sudden deals get made, deals get made, deals get made, and then by the time you get down here, it's too late. You can't back out because
Yes.
there's too much going on. Another big tactic that they have is to have parties, and whether
Yes.
Right.
there's usually women or men involved, doesn't matter anymore, but then they get incriminating photos of these politicians or community leaders, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're drunk, they get to a hotel room, and boom, all of a sudden there's video. By the way, we have video of you. And
Yes.
so, you know, but it's not all like that anymore. That's a big part of it. But there's so many ways to trap people.
Right.
And then you can't go back. Once you're down that rabbit hole, you can't come back. So,
Yep. Yep.
all right. So then, and that also reminds me of people. When you had mentioned people, it's like sometimes people are on a power trip. It's like, oh my gosh, people are going to like me if I do this or if I do that, or I'm playing with the big boys and girls now, and
Sure.
it's like,
Yeah.
and it's like they get into this mindset that they do it for their own arrogance, their own,
Yes.
Yep.
just to kind of
Yep.
build themselves up.
Yep,
But quickly, we
exactly.
have three more. Stage 3 is developing. And this is where intelligence officers generally don't lead off by asking potential sources to betray their country or their employer. The third stage of espionage recruitment instead is known as developing, when recruiters begin to ask for trivial requests or favors to establish a rapport. As former CIA Director John Brennan said last year, frequently people who go along a treasonous path do not know they're on a treasonous path until it's too late. And we
Right.
kind of did touch on
Yep,
that a
yep.
little bit.
Well, it just seems that they're going to do something very small that makes them feel like it's really important, and they don't realize that they're actually betraying their country by even talking to these people.
Right. And my brain goes to, yes, that's small fry, but I'm seeing more and more big business in America that is purposely, they got to know by now China's not our friend. If they don't, they're living in some bubble that I don't know how they made their money, you know?
That's true.
But they're taking their companies to China, and they're developing joint ventures with China in China and bringing China here to develop joint ventures. And it's like, you do not need that much more money to put our country at risk, and yet many companies are doing it. And I really hope that we find out that we can elect a Congress that can start to put the hammer down and say, that's enough.
Yes.
We are not going to sell our souls to China, you know, and we're going to put some restrictions on this because it's just wrong.
Right. So then stage 4 is recruiting.
The direct request to spy is often the most fraught moment of an espionage operation, but sometimes it starts off easily enough. One-time CIA officer Kevin Mallory was recruited to spy for the Chinese right off LinkedIn in February of 2017. Mallory, who was working as a consultant at the time, was contacted over the social network by someone from a Chinese think tank known as the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. The FBI said in court documents that the prestigious organization, China's oldest social science think tank, is regularly relied upon by MSS, who uses SASS employees as spotters and assessors, and that MSS officers have also used SAS affiliated as cover identities.
Right. And so quickly, we'll just go to the 5th one. It's handling. The most delicate part of espionage operation is always maintaining the regular day-to-day communications between a spy and his or her assigned handler, whereas previous generations often relied on the Cold War tradecraft of physical drops. They don't do that anymore, you know, where
Right.
you see it on all
Yeah.
the James Bond movies, you
Yeah.
walk by
Exactly.
and you pass something.
Yeah, yeah.
There is still some of that, but they said the biggest thing is open file folders on your computer. And so it's really interesting, but something to pay attention to.